Hey, this is Steve Good on the Coin Chat.
And Yuri, Cataldo.
And we are back today to talk about cutting through the... What are we doing? We're checking out the charts in crypto today.
Checking the charts.
Absolutely, yeah. There's lots of different things we cover. So yeah, today we're checking out the charts. There's a lot of negativity that's still out there lingering, but I think things are turning a corner. I think we're about to see some good positive signs. We see lots of things happening. So I thought it would be good just to catch up with you, Yuri, as we've been doing, and talk about the charts since the SEC didn't announce anything. And well, we kind of hinged all of our last, review based on the SEC, which said nothing.
Right. So yes, I do want to follow up with you on the charts. I don't know if you've noticed this, but I think, where was it? In early August, the one of the founders of Binance tweeted that he felt that we would be on a bull run, and then he quickly deleted his tweet, which kind of pissed some people off, and they found it a little bit kind of suspicious. Here we go. It was on August 29th. He tweeted that and then quickly deleted it. So, other, let's say, thought leaders in the space keep on talking about potential bull market. So I do.
Well, maybe the guy in Binance was just concerned about saying something that might be seen or construed as trying to influence the market, since he's from an exchange itself.
That's true. Because, right. If you think about it, would someone from the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ tweet about that?
No,
probably not. Probably not. So yeah, that could be the why. But other people have been predicting another bull market. So yes, let's look at the chart.
Tom Lee was out doing, from Fundstrat, was out presenting recently, and he said he's expecting Ether to hit 1,900 by the end of next year, 2019.
Hopefully, that's
Mike Novogratz, big name in the institutional world that came from the normal institutional investing in equity stocks, and what have you, who's now quite big in crypto, has said he's expecting Q1, Q2 to be a pretty, bullish launch once we start seeing institutional money moving in, which it is moving in, but he's been talking about a much more bullish 2019. Of course, the question is, where are we now?
Yeah, exactly. Where are we now? Where are we going?
Yeah. So, my point of view is I think that we kind of hit a bottom probably in September, but it's been very slowly ticking along, moving upwards. But I've noticed, for example, that if you look at the really long-term trend of Bitcoin trending downwards, we've crossed over that line actually just in the last day or so, which is a good indicator. But there's other indicators I look at, like short and long-term trend lines, and we had what's called, and shall I show you the screen, because that might help to put things in context a bit. So, okay, so why don't we just pop over to the charts, and I can just show you a couple of things that are kind of interesting, and maybe we can have some interesting discussions about that. So what I've done is I've just popped up a screen from Bitfinex, which I tend to use. Now, first thing you'll see here is that what I've got is this kind of part of the downward trend that you see. Let me go back to the Bitcoin one, because that's going to make more sense now. Okay, cool. So,
okay, sure.
Yeah, so in Bitcoin, I've got this kind of, a very kind of zoomed out view, really long term, showing this big, long onward trend that we've had going down for ages. But
I'm sorry, but before you do that, what does the green line mean, and what does the red line mean?
Right. Okay. Yeah. So this is cool. So the green and red lines are trend lines. Now in Bitcoin terms, a lot of, well, let me go back for a second. In the stock market, you typically find a 50-day moving average, which is a green line, and a 200-day moving average, which is a red line. Now, we typically look at those two lines because you're looking at a long-term trend, and you usually want the 50-day moving, well, you always want the 50-day moving average above the 200 one, because it's a shorter-term trend line that tells you whether you're going up or down relative to the long-term trend. So every so often we have this thing where, and you see it here, which is what happened in February of 2018 when we had the Bitcoin sell-off. And it took some time for the trend lines to kind of cross each other. I'm using an 18-day short-term and a 100-day long-term. And why I'm using 100 instead of 200 is because in equity or stock market terms, 200 days is roughly a year, but in Bitcoin terms, there's no exact number to use for days. So there's a lot of people that use 100.
24/7.
Yeah, so people kind of trace on 100 days roughly because it's going 24/7. So it's obviously trading, more. And I'm using 18 as a short-term one because it's more sensible. It's quite a common number to use, but of course anybody could comment below in the description or send us some feedback and say whether we've got the right numbers here. But this is something I've used a lot and find quite useful. But you'll see that we had what was called the death cross, which is what it's called, where the short-term green line dropped below the red one, and it did that when Bitcoin was around 12,000, which of course many people would say, well, it's a bit late. Well, yes, it was a bit late because it happened so quickly, and we're talking about averages over 18 days or over 100 days, so it's kind of hard to measure that on really short time frames unless you're measuring trades on short term, which of course would give you a different view. But we had that death cross, and to be honest, other than one little attempt to get out of it or two little attempts to get out of it, which occurred when we had kind of these run ups and then run down and then run up and run down, we've had one, two, I guess 3 false attempts to break above the trend line between the short and the long-term trend. But what's really interesting is in every one of those cases, we did not break above the long-term trend going down, which was this, the line that I've drawn from back in March to present day. It's always been trending downwards, and we never even rose above that line. But where it's, I think, rather interesting for the Bitcoin world is that we've got kind of a reversal here where we've now actually crossed above that line, which tells us that that kind of ongoing long-term downward trend seems to have been reversed. And it probably actually reversed quite possibly, if you look at it from a really kind of trending perspective, it probably reversed itself when we were back in June, but there's no way you could see that because it ran back up and then it ran back down and then ran up again and then ran back down. But kind of since we were looking at September, from September onward is when we've seen a more kind of gradual, stable, but slightly increasing trend, which we've been talking about on the show a few times. And that's been kind of going on for a while. But when I zoom in a bit more, what you also see is that we've actually crossed above this resistance line. We're above it. We closed above it. We opened above it. We've remained above it. That would be, for me, a really good sign if we stay there. We had thought that the SEC was going to make their announcement on the 5th of September, which they just decided to say it was never actually the case, and everyone had the news wrong. Well, either all of us had the news wrong or the SEC just changed their minds. Who knows? I mean, they could say what they want, but they did not make an announcement on the 5th of November. So it didn't have any impact on anything about the ETFs and whether they're going to be approved or rejected. So we just carry on with business as normal. But for me, what's really interesting is now we're kind of getting into this place where the 18-day trend line is kind of carrying on. The red one's carrying on. They're narrowing together. The green one looks like it could be, I mean, it's hard to say here because it's, very, very narrow. They're very, kind of almost running parallel. But what we need to see is just enough, in my opinion, movement of Bitcoin upward that pulls that 18-day average over the red one. And then we're out of the death cross territory and we're into bullish territory. So I'm hoping that if we continue on this path, that let's just say a week from now, we may have 2 indicators that we've moved into bull market or 3 rather than 1.
Excellent. Is there it's hard to tell on my side. Is there a support line that you see developing somewhere, or if it
support line indicator where it should dip? The only support lines that I've drawn is this long-term line that's just kind of drawn here where we've been kind of bouncing along and touching it. And that's a line that goes back quite a long ways. Really goes back to the beginnings of when Bitcoin first took off, which was in March 2017, where it made its first really kind of upward trended move. And then it did a bit of its first kind of real kind of dump, the first time it really did sell off, which was in July 2017. And I drew the line from there to there. And I just carried drawing the line out to see how far it went. And what's really interesting is when you follow that line and you keep going and you see what happened on the 10th of 2018, it literally sold down to the line, bounced back up and continued uptrend.
Yeah. That's interesting.
So that's always an indicator that is a technical indicator that's often not related to anything newsworthy. It just happens to be that these lines just work like this on a really long-term trended basis. So that could give us an indication that we've seen a huge range of support for this kind of trend that we're in now, albeit not very steep. It doesn't mean that we're not going to get big, steep jumps. In fact, you know about what happens in December and January on the stock market, right?
No, I don't. What happens?
Well, sometimes we get this thing called the Christmas rally.
The Christmas rally?
Yeah.
Like a Santa Claus run type of thing?
Yeah, so the Christmas rally is oftentimes associated with something like the last week of December and the first 2 days of January. And it's often been kind of an omen for what the next full year will bring. So, some of it's related to people doing tax write-offs and closing off the end of the year and buying stuff while it's cheap and whatever. But the rally itself is just the rally. And either, the Santa Claus rally happens or it doesn't. But there, you can Google it. We'll put an article in YouTube down at the bottom in the description that actually refers back to what the Santa Claus rally is. But I think we could get a Santa Claus rally on Bitcoin. I think it's entirely possible. And maybe that's what we'll call the episode, is something along the lines of the Santa Claus rallies around the corner.
I like it. I like it. It's from what you're showing, it looks like it's a good indication that that's along the way.
Yeah. So I feel like, we had kind of a trend that started forming along here, which started kind of in, as I said, kind of in June, maybe more so in August. But, generally speaking, we're not downtrended as such the same way. I mean, we have higher lows, which is a good thing, but what we want to see now is higher highs, because that's a real good indicator that we're on the way up. And that's what we need to see happen now, is higher highs. We need to see the 18 cross above the 100 line, which could happen in the next week or 2 weeks if things go well. And of course, that takes us right into the Christmas period and Thanksgiving and turkey coin and all that other good stuff. So we might see a rise in the turkey coin, followed by a rise with the Santa Claus rally. So I'm becoming more optimistic, and I'll just stop there. We won't talk about any of the coins today because I just think people are really interested in what's happening with Bitcoin. Although we've had a lot of questions recently about Ether to Bitcoin, BCH, ETC. I've had a whole bunch of requests, so we're going to have to kind of parko those because I don't want to go on and on today because there'd be a lot to cover. But
sure.
Yeah. But what I would say though is that, these are all good indicators. And yet what I find fascinating is the number of ICOs that I've come across that were actually pretty decent ICOs, projects, what have you, that have just been saying, we're going to put them on hold. We're going to cancel because the market's so bad. And I'm saying, well, actually the market was pretty damn bad when it was on a downward slope and it was sloping down, 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 but it's been going sideways or gradually going upwards. And at the same time that's happening, I'm hearing more and more investors saying, haven't you got interesting projects you can just introduce me to? And I'm saying, yeah, well, this one canceled. This one just canceled. This one delayed. Well, can't you get us to meet them? Well, they're not interested. They don't want to fly. They don't want to spend any money. And it's like this really weird thing where investors know when the right time is to buy low and sell high. And in the midst of that typical mentality of, I see lots of investors getting excited, all the projects are saying, there's no money and we're going to hold off.
Oh, that's such a disconnect.
We are in the world of the most massive disconnect between fundraising and investors that I've probably ever seen since I've been in crypto. I mean, it's just amazing, the disconnect where, an event organizer will contact me and say, hey, I'm organizing an event. I've got some investors. I've got some ICOs, and just says, do you have any projects or do you know any interesting, teams out there that might want to come? And and I'll say, well, actually, this is interesting for real estate. This is interesting for insurance. This is interesting for telecoms. This one's interesting for fine art. And I go and I talk to all of them and they're like, ooh, I don't know. I'm not sure if I could afford that right now. And you're like, oh, you guys crazy. What's wrong with you? This is the opportunity. Yeah. Investors are looking for projects and projects aren't turning up. So they're only going to cherry pick the best ones. And if best ones are turning up, they're going to get money.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, that says a lot then for the projects that are actually getting out there right now. because there are so many investors looking to invest that they just
But the investors are cherry picking only good stuff. So they have all the crap stuff still shows up. They're going to say no. So yeah,
the crap stuff should still go away anyway.
Yeah.
Like regardless of market, the crap stuff should stay away.
If the Christmas rally equals, we get lots and lots of presents from Christmas, and all the ICOs that are really, and I'm not talking about your average 22-year-old ICO with a team that doesn't know anything about what they're trying to build, that's telling me they're building another payment platform, which means I can send you my coins. Thank you very much. But there are a lot of people who are industry experts, who are, seasoned professionals, who are now recognizing there are things they can do in crypto. Some of it's STO, meaning security, asset backed. Some of it is still token utility. But there's actually more and more good ideas coming. But even the seasoned guys are afraid to spend the money because they just don't know what's happening in crypto. So they're like, ooh, we're in a bear market, so no, I'm not spending my money to invest in this. And then why are you doing this? I mean, come on. The whole point is that there's lots of money out there from investors. Get out there and do it. It's crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've gone off piece a little bit from the analysis, but, it could be related that the investors are starting to see signs of what you and I see now, which is things are starting to turn around a little bit.
Yeah, which is good. Good. I'm excited to see what happens later in the end of the year and start of 2019.
Yeah. By the way, I just got to give a little shout out to my little guy who's turning 6 today. And of course, we have the video on our show about what a 3 and 5-year-old say about Bitcoin. So I may have to do a refresh on what does a 6-year-old say on Bitcoin. So I will look at doing that. But a little shout out to Xander. Happy birthday, little guy. Not such a little guy anymore.
That's true. Happy birthday, Xander. I'm sure his views on Bitcoin probably have changed since last time. So I'm also curious to hear what.
Well, he still talks about paper money, but I don't think he's talking about paper money. I think he's talking about crypto. But who knows? We'll give it another try. Maybe I'll bring him on the show for fun and see what he asks you. I'll let him interview you and see what he asks you about crypto.
Definitely. And then
I'll go.
Yeah. And then the last little bit, Justin, unfortunate tax stuff. Have you heard about the student?
Oh yeah, this is. I'm not sure this is the best way to end the episode.
Well, it's interesting just because, it's not the most positive aspect. It is an idea that, the IRS still, especially in the States, is keeping tabs on what we're doing and wants to get its money no matter what. And so especially pay attention on the crypto space.
You're describing this teenager, I think he's about, 17, 18 years old?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like $5,000 and got into Ether really early. And it ran up all the way. So the value of his account, and I mean, he must have been trading as well, but the value of his account went all the way up to $400,000. And then $880,000. But yeah, the 400,000 was how much tax he owes on that.
But he started buying into a lot of ICOs and lost a bunch of money on those.
Oh, is that what happened?
Yeah, so it's like as this was rising up, he was like, great, I've got all this extra cash. He started investing in terrible ICOs, lost a lot of it. So his account is now worth I think 100,000, which is still great compared to his original investment. But for every ICO he invested in, IRS wants their money.
Well, see, what I find really interesting is that I guess because he lost the money after the tax year finished or something. So that's where the issue is for him.
Yeah, it's something like that. It's the article I found is a little bit unclear.
Yeah,
because it talks about
a little bit vague. Actually, I've seen a few, but I've not seen one that was 100% concrete. It's more than it's all the sensational, horrible stuff about the poor kid that owes $400,000 to the IRS, but hasn't gone to the details of exactly what trades he did that got himself in this mess in the first place.
Yeah, because I'm really confused on that too. Because it's according to the quote, it says he started going into bad ICOs in 2018, but that his tax liability for 2017 is $400,000. So that doesn't make any sense. I'm not sure on that one. Maybe he's just trying to get sympathy.
I do find all of this interesting though, in terms of the way we go about taxing and approaching crypto in the States, because of the fact that I try to think of it like if I have what's called an open position, meaning I've got dollars and I go long on euros, or if I buy a stock, I have an open position, and the position only closes when I move it back to dollar. But for some reason, when you say you have an open position with dollars and you buy Ether, you're literally owning Ether, and now they treat the value of Ether instead of the trade pair. And probably because you can move that Ether trade to a Bitcoin trade pair, and then you can move it around as if it's just asset on its own. And I find that a little bit frustrating because it doesn't allow us to actually open and close positions. It's like they're always open or they're always closed. And it's only when you have a closed position, that's where it becomes a taxable event. Because if you buy Microsoft and then you sell it, it's when you sell it, that's where it's taxable at the gain or the loss. That's taxable. And we're not doing that in crypto. So everything is always open. And that's a little bit odd for me because at what point is the position closed? Only never.
Right. Well, according to, so the other quote later in the article is, all of his taxable amounts have come from crypto to crypto trades. He's still never, ever cashed out.
Right.
But, you know, in the stock market analysis, it's like, you know, you can't trade Microsoft shares for Apple shares directly. No. You have to cash out and then go back in.
No, but when you're trading in fiat, for example, if I trade in the euro dollar trade pair, I'm not buying euros literally, and that's maybe the difference. I'm buying if I go long on euro dollar, it's because I'm looking for it to go up. And if I'm shorting the euro dollar, I'm literally selling for it to go down. And only when I do the reverse trade do I close the position. And that's a little bit different from literally buying euros and then I'm holding euros and then I go back and buy dollars. So I can understand why they're doing it that way, because we're not really treating this as a trade pair in the literal sense. We're literally moving cash from A to B to C. So it's I feel really bad for this guy. I really do. I mean, my heart goes out to him because it's really crappy. I shouldn't laugh. It's not funny, but it is, you know, and we are going to bring a tax expert onto the show actually, and maybe we'll just kind of focus on the US tax market for starters. But I would certainly welcome anybody who's listening to the show or who is watching who does have an interest or experience or is a tax accountant, preferably, who can advise people outside the US, UK, China, Korea, Japan, Russia, other countries in general, just to kind of give a flavor of how taxes are treated in different countries would be really, really interesting. So we can give people a little bit more to think about in terms of how things are regulating and changing for everybody.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So have you got anything positive you wanted to end with now?
I do. So we're doing that one positive. So have you heard, so Eric Schmidt recently has come out. So Eric Schmidt is the billionaire ex-Google CEO. He's an enthusiast, a Bitcoin and Ethereum enthusiast, and he has been praising Ethereum, actually I think in the last 24 hours.
Really?
Let's see here. He has said that the Ethereum could be a very powerful platform and has untapped potential that is off the charts. Direct quote.
Cool. How interesting. I thought I saw somebody else who had also made comments about that with relation to Ethereum regarding Vitalik Buterin. Who was it that said that? No, I can't remember who I read that was that about. It's just another article I just read. See if I can find
about
it. Do I have it here? I don't. Well, if I find the article, it was William Shatner.
William Shatner. Yeah. That's awesome.
Well, so
Eric Schmidt, William Shatner. It's good stuff.
Set phasers to hodl says the name of the article. Yeah. So we'll stick that in the description down below for anybody who wants to check out what William Shatner's views are on Ethereum. And on that note, thank you everybody for listening in, watching today on another episode of the Coin Chat, where we've done a little bit of analysis on Bitcoin and just talked about a lot of stuff because we're just silly and we do things like that. Don't forget to subscribe and like us on the way out. We always appreciate that. And don't forget, if you're on YouTube, to hit that little notification button. Actually, that's the same on some of the other channels like Spotify and Apple as well. So please do put those little notifications on. And we'll be back again very soon. To the moon. Until next time.